Everyman Nerds podcast. My name is Taylor Salem, and joining me today is
Kurt Hall.
Awesome. How you doing, man?
I am spectacular.
Cool. So you guys may or may not notice that we're going to be trying a new format with this episode. So hopefully everything goes to plan, and you guys will be seeing us in this new format. So we're going to see how this works out. But for this episode in particular, we're going to go ahead and talk about the career of Leonardo DiCaprio. This is, of course, in honor of The Great Gatsby, which comes out this weekend. So we're just going to kind of do what we do here, and we're just going to go through the filmography of Leo, and we're going to see what happens, see what things we like, and see which ones we don't care for. So first of all, before we start into the filmography, what are your kind of general thoughts about Leonardo DiCaprio as an actor?
I think he's really good. I've never been the type of person that has classified him as like the greatest actor of his generation or anything like that, but he tends to be in really good movies and he tends to put on really good performances. Therefore, I tend to watch all of his movies.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's solid, you know. He's no Daniel Day-Lewis, you know. But I have to agree, he's a pretty solid actor. I don't know if would you describe him as a character actor?
If you mean that he's always playing a good character, then sure.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a difference. Like, there's character actors who kind of have non-leading roles, and then there's the leading man who, I mean, it seems like he wants to be a character actor, but he kind of got after Titanic, he kind of got put into that leading man, role, kind of shoehorned into there. But okay, so let's go ahead and start out. I'm just gonna kind of rattle a few movies off here that I don't think either of us have seen, or movies that we particularly care about. So Leonardo DiCaprio's first movie is, of course, Critters 3. That came out in 1991. 92 was his second film credit with Poison Ivy. And 1993, the first half, a movie called This Boy's Life came out. Neither of us have seen any of these three movies, so we're just going to go ahead and pass those. But also in 1993, hey man, dude, you know you want to see Critters 3. Oh man, that just sounds horrendous. But 1993 came out a little movie called What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Now, if you ask me, this is the movie that really put DiCaprio on the map. He, if I'm not mistaken here, yes, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in this role. So what are your thoughts on his acting in this movie?
I love Who's Eating Gilbert Grape. I think it's one of those movies where you finally see someone blooming to their full potential, even at a really young age. I would kind of put it on the same level as like a Will Smith in 6 Degrees of Separation. But DiCaprio is really good here. He has this weird charisma that I don't want to say makes him seem otherworldly for the age that he's at, but he has just enough of that immaturity, but he has that charisma to kind of reel the film into his own hand. And I think if they would have had someone else in that film, it probably would not have been nearly as strong.
Yeah, I completely agree. The thing that strikes me about What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and particularly his performance in this movie, is the fact that he seems so in control of his performance. You know, I mean, for an actor that young to have an awareness of what he's doing in this movie and to actually be making acting choices at that type, that age, I think really says something. For those of you that don't know, because I don't know about you, but I actually hadn't seen What's Eating Gilbert Grape until a few years ago. It's kind of one of those not underappreciated, but I would say underseen films of his. And, of course, Johnny Depp's in this movie. But, I mean, when you think about this movie, I always think about Leonardo DiCaprio, because he's definitely the performance that kind of shines through everything else. But I think we can just go ahead and move on. I mean, let's just say that after What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I think, you know, he showed a lot of potential in that movie. Uh, but I don't know. At the same time, I don't know if he has ever done anything that good again.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, it's kind of a Oscar baity movie. I mean, he is playing a mentally challenged child, and it does seem kind of obvious in a way, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know. But let's move on here. 1994 came out the cinematic classic called the Foot Shooting Party, which just has the greatest title ever. Kurt and I were actually just doing a little research on this movie, and I couldn't even find anything on it. So I think that says everything you need to know. 1995, we had three films from Leonardo DiCaprio: The Quick and the Dead, a film called Total Eclipse, and one of his more well-known roles, and that's of course in The Basketball Diaries. I haven't seen this movie, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw the ball to you, Kurt. What do you think about his performance in this film?
That was an awesome pun. It's he's really good in it. It's a very odd film for him to show up in, especially since The Basketball Diaries is. I don't know how to describe this movie. I can't really say it's bad, but I can't say it's great either. Um, it's a very odd film. I would recommend watching it if you're into seeing a bunch of actors who don't really seem like they should belong in a movie of this sort.
Cool. It's definitely one I'm gonna have to check out. If I'm not mistaken, I think that one's on Netflix, so there's really no reason not to watch it. Okay, so moving on, 1996. We actually had two pretty decent performances from Leo, and one of these I haven't seen, which is of course Marvin's Room. So why don't you talk about that for a minute or two here?
Marvin's Room is one of those films I feel like tried to do the What's Eating Gilbert Grape type Oscar bait stuff, but the script kind of befalls that and kills it. But I would argue that DiCaprio is every bit as good as in this film as What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Problem is his character isn't really the strongest written
Yeah,
part
it's
of it.
definitely one of those. It sounds like it's definitely one of those where the actor kind of elevates the material.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, that one. It seems also isn't that movie kind of depressing? I mean, even more so than Gilbert Grape.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
His mother is played by Susan Sarandon, I want to say,
Hmm.
and that storyline is really tragic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's probably one I probably that's not real high priority for me right now. But also in 1996 we had what could be one of his breakout roles before obviously the year after this, and that is Romeo plus Juliet. And yes, I had to pronounce it like it is written because Baz Luhrmann is that cool. Um, and of course, this is Baz Luhrmann who also directed The Great Gatsby, which Leo is in. He also did Australia and what was it? Gosh, I'm blanking here. It's the musical, not Chicago, right?
No.
Moulin Rouge.
Yep.
Okay. So what is your opinion? I'm just out of curiosity. What's your opinion on Romeo and Juliet and his performance in this movie?
I had very mixed feelings about Romeo plus Juliet. I thought it was a very odd way to adapt Shakespeare. Like, I admire the idea of taking modern technology and adding it in, and just kind of taking the whole play and letting it play out through Shakespearean language. But that's one of the things I tend to not like about Shakespeare adaptations is that I can't understand what's going on because it's Shakespeare language. But I did like the idea of instead of using old time weapons, they actually used guns and they had cell phones. But it just feels so out of place with the dialogue. But Leonardo DiCaprio is really good in the movie. Probably because he acts on the opposite side of Claire Danes, who is not the most spectacular actress in the world. So
Yeah.
take that for what you will.
Okay, so in 1997, probably what the movie Leo is best known for came out, and that is of course Titanic. So what are your thoughts on his performance in this movie?
I'm kind of sad that he's best known for his performance in Titanic. I think Titanic is a fine film for what it is. I think it kind of takes its own liberties with the Titanic uh, sinking, but he's good. He's really good in it. It's really stuffy. It's one of his more stuffy performances. I'll say that much. But he's really good in it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think he does a serviceable job, like kind of like I was mentioning earlier. This is kind of the movie that transitioned him into that leading man role that he's kind of had for the last decade or so. But I don't think the acting is the highlight of that movie. I mean, it kind of feels like James Cameron was, like most of his movies, more interested in the technical elements than the actual performances. But I think him and Kate Winslet both do a serviceable job. It's nothing bad, it's nothing great. So with that said, let's move on. 1998. Leo came out with The Man in the Iron Mask. Now, this is one of those movies that I find to be one of my favorite performances from Leonardo DiCaprio, simply because he's doing that kind of dual role, the dual personality, and I think he really, in this movie, does a really good job of differentiating the twin characters, the one that's really evil and the one that's in the Iron Mask, so to speak. So what are your thoughts on this film?
I don't really think this movie is spectacular by any measure, but his performance in it is really good.
Yeah,
I like how he actually had the he really had the balls to do both. And not only does he have the technical skill to play both, but like you said, he differentiates the characters so well that you never feel like, "Oh, I can't tell which one is which is kind of awesome."
yeah, I agree. Okay, so in 1998, he also had a film called Celebrity. I don't know if you've seen this, but we're just going to go ahead and move on because it's probably one of his less known films. So in 2000, DiCaprio starred in a little movie called The Beach. Now, I know this movie gets a lot of flack from people. I think it's a fun movie that kind of lets the audience down, in the last 30 minutes. There's a lot of buildup and it doesn't really work, but I think his performance is pretty phenomenal in this movie, especially considering how crazy it gets with like that animated video game sequence where he's kind of going insane and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on this film?
He has
Well,
a
his performance in this film.
he has a great performance in The Beach. Sadly, that's the only great thing about the movie. I would say it's Danny Boyle's worst film. But Danny Boyle is a great actor director, and he really gives DiCaprio a lot to work with here to really shine.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think there's enough said with that movie. Hopefully, we can maybe come back and talk about that one a little more because I think it's an interesting movie, even though it's not completely successful. So in 2001, we had a film called Don's Plum, which I have never even heard of, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on. But in 2002, now this year was interesting for Leonardo DiCaprio because I specifically remember this year on Christmas of 2002, he not had not one but two movies coming out on the same day. And of course, these movies are Catch Me If You Can and Gangs of New York. So why don't you tell me your thoughts on Catch Me If You Can and then Gangs of New York?
Catch Me If You Can is probably my favorite DiCaprio film. He is just awesome in this movie. I love how he kind of starts off as this he's kind of like an abandoned kid almost, and he
Mm-hmm.
just kind of leaves his family because it just doesn't he doesn't like the situation, and he starts his own life, but he kind of thieves his way to it. But
Yeah.
I really like his role in this movie, and he knocks it out of the park. I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't hurt that he has other actors like Tom Hanks to play off of, but
Yeah.
really spectacular stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Catch Me If You Can is interesting because it's one of those Leo performances where again, kind of like the Man in the Iron Mask, even though he's not playing dual roles here, you can really see the progression of the character and the changes of the character. And I think he does a really good job. With not only the script things but with the subtle things too. The tiny little tidbits that are in the movie. So I have to agree with you on that. I think it's probably my favorite DiCaprio performance as well. I mean, you look at scenes like the one in the hotel room where he's got his setup and Tom Hanks is coming in there and he's pretending to be this other person and at the same time he's nervous and all these things are going on and I think it's just a really really good performance from him. But what are your thoughts on Gangs of New York?
I like Gangs of New York a lot as a film. I think it kind of has its downfalls, i.e., Cameron Diaz, but it's a really great film, and DiCaprio puts on a pretty solid performance. I would argue he gets way outshined by Daniel Day-Lewis in it, but he puts on a pretty solid kind of lead performance in the film.
Yeah. Well, and it's not one of those flashy performances like, say, Catch Me If You Can, which is very focused on his character, you know, and that's exactly what I was going to point out is everybody in this movie gets outshined by Daniel Day-Lewis, and I don't think that's particularly Leo's fault, you know. I think it's just that he's acting against Daniel Day-Lewis, and the guy is a freaking genius. So we'll just move on from that. Hopefully we can talk about Gangs of New York in the future because that's one that's hit or miss for me. You know, I mean, any scene that doesn't have Bill the Butcher is not really that interesting to me. So let's move on here. In 2004, he came out with The Aviator. So what are your thoughts on him, on Leo's portrayal of Howard Hughes? Now, before you get into what you're going to say, I will mention, for those of you that don't know, this was a real passion project for DiCaprio. I mean, he fought for years and years and years to play this character, and he finally got to do it, but he had to be in Gangs of New York for Scorsese. You know, he said, we'll do Gangs of New York, and then we'll do The Aviator. And I think that's pretty telling, you know, about Gangs of New York. So what are your thoughts on The Aviator and his performance as Howard Hughes in this?
He is spectacular as Howard Hughes,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell he wanted to be in this movie a lot
Yeah.
because this movie focuses a lot on DiCaprio, and it could have really failed based upon how he did in the role, and he's really, really good here. But I mean, it doesn't. It's really hard to not look good when you have, Martin Scorsese directing you,
Yeah.
and I think it's really smart of him to jump on movies with him. And he definitely is a lot better in The Aviator than Gangs of New York.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, you can just tell that he's more interested and more invested in this character. So, I mean, I know a lot of people that don't like The Aviator. I think it's actually one of my favorite DiCaprio-Scorsese collaborations. Shutter Island might have a slight advantage, but I think behind that is The Aviator for me. Even though I think The Departed is a better movie, I enjoy The Aviator more. So, speaking of The Departed, that was his next film, which came out in 2006. So what are your thoughts as Leo portraying William Billy Costigan in this movie?
Awesome. The Departed is amazing. It is one of the most heavily intricate stories, and it's really hard to follow. But god dang, every performance in this movie is amazing. Even like Mark Wahlberg shows up in this film and totally tears it up.
Yeah.
But DiCaprio is definitely the lead of the movie, and he is awesome. There's some pretty spectacular scenes of him in an apartment at the end of the film that really steal the show with his very subtle character moments.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I completely agree with that. I will say this is probably one of his most intricate performances as far as the actual performance itself, because again, he's playing a character who's essentially playing a character the whole movie, you know, and that's something that's really really hard to do. I mean, it sounds simple, it sounds easy, but it's really not. I mean, and considering when they probably made this movie over the course of 3 to 5 months, just a guesstimation. I don't exactly know, but the movie is 2.5 hours, so it probably took some time to film. And to be in that mindset for that long, I think is a real achievement. I know other actors have done this before. Daniel Day-Lewis has done this before. Even after he's done with a movie, he still stays in character for a while. But I think it's really telling, and it was a real challenge for him too. It's not something where he could just kind of shoe in a performance. He actually had to do something interesting in this movie. So also in the same year, we had Blood Diamond. Now Now, this is one of my favorite Leo performances. I think he's trying to do something a little different here. Um, especially with the accent, and he's never really done a character with such a foreign accent to his own. So what are your thoughts on Blood Diamond? And obviously his performance.
Blood Diamond is one of his top echelon films to me. He, I will say, sometimes the accent goes a little haywire,
Mm-hmm.
but I think if you can ignore something like that, he has an awesome performance here, and that's another one of those films where you got to wonder, like, if Leo's not in this film, is it as good as it ended up being at
Yeah,
the end?
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. And one thing I will say is that one of the downfalls of DiCaprio as an actor for me is that he tends to I'll say make safe choices, if you will. He kind of tends to stay in his comfort zone or things that he knows he can do. And I mean, even going back to The Aviator, as great as he is in that movie, it's something he knew he could portray. It's something he knew he could do. And I think Blood Diamond is one of those instances where Leo is really kind of stepping out of the box a little bit, and trying to do something different. And there's a couple things here that we'll talk about in a couple minutes where he also does that. So we'll just move on here. In 2008, he also had two films come out. This was, of course, Body of Lies and Revolutionary Road. So why don't we start with Body of Lies? What do you think of his performance in this movie?
I think he puts on a solid performance, but once again, this was one of those movies that had a very rough script that didn't really allow for a whole lot of great things to come out of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I have to agree. It's I enjoy the movie. I own it. But I have to agree there's some really inherent flaws with the movie, and I think kind of setting the Russell Crowe character and the DiCaprio character to where they're only communicating via like phone and satellite was one of the big mistakes. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I think seeing Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe go toe to toe in a scene together would be awesome. I mean, I don't know. Am I wrong here? Do they have a scene together? I can't honestly remember.
I think they might have one early, but it
Okay.
kind of ends at that point.
Yeah, but it never goes anywhere, is what I'm saying.
No.
You don't get to see these guys doing what they do best. And that's kind of bouncing off each other, I guess, if you will, kind of riffing off each other. So we'll move on. Revolutionary Road. It's a fucking sad movie. Moving on. Shutter Island came out in 2010, and so did Inception. The funny thing about these two movies, and I don't know if you agree with me here, Kurt, is his roles in both of these movies seem very, very similar. So go ahead and talk about a little bit about Shutter Island, and then we'll talk Inception after that.
I would have to agree. They are both very similar because he kind of plays the same archetype of
Yeah.
a kind of hero, but he has bad elements to him. Shutter Island is, in my opinion, the better of the two. I think there's a little better acting to me that exists in Shutter Island. I really like how he plays off of Mark Ruffalo in this
Mm-hmm.
film. That and anytime Scorsese and Leo work together, it tends to make some pretty awesome stuff. Uh, but I really like how he has to act confused in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think we've ever seen him do that a whole lot in a film. He tends to be the one kind of in control
Yeah.
of all of the situations, and I think it was nice to see him in a role that was a nice change up.
Yeah. I completely agree, man. Shutter Island is one of those interesting horror movies that I kind of it almost it's almost more of a like a psychological horror than anything. It's really, I mean, and I know people that were extremely pissed off about the ending. And I saw the movie in theaters, and I was a little let down the first time, just because the trailer had kind of promised things that the movie necessarily didn't deliver on. But going back to that movie, and I've revisited Shutter Island maybe 5 or 6 times since it came out in theaters, since I originally saw it back in 2010. It's just an amazing character study about this really, really dysfunctional person. You know, this character he plays, of Teddy Daniels, is just, he has a weird, twisted sense of reality. You know, and it's just this really great psychological portrait of mental illness. You know, and you know, once you understand that that's what the movie is trying to explore, I think there's well, it sheds a whole new light on his performance, but I think it also adds to the movie.
Yeah.
So let's move on here. Inception. What are your thoughts?
I think he's really good in Inception, but I think it's probably his most overrated role. I think a lot of people tend to act like he's this revolutionary character, and I mean, he's really fantastic in it, but Inception as a whole, as a movie, felt way overrated to me. Even like the ending to the film was like supposedly mind blowing, but it's really not. If you sit there and think about it for 5 minutes, it's really not that spectacular. But it is a really good movie. If it weren't for that dream within a dream within a dream sequence, I probably would have liked it a lot more.
That's
But
like the whole movie.
yeah, but when they go to the third dream,
Yeah.
in the winter, I felt like that was a little over the top for a
Yeah,
moment.
it feels like that is the least interesting out of all the dream scenes in that movie. But one thing I really find interesting about his performance in this movie is that it's more of a I don't know, you know, this it's more of a tortured character than anything, you know, and I think he really conveys that well in this movie, you know. He's a character with a lot of secrets, you know, and I think he you know, sure, it comes up in the script a little bit in certain scenes, like where Ellen Page goes into his dream and she's in that elevator or whatever. But I mean, I think he does a good job of kind of conveying that in this movie. And I mean, when you think about it, with the exception of Titanic, this is probably one of his, you know, one of his only movies with an extremely high budget, you know, like, I mean, talking 150, 175 million. So for him to do that, in such a large budget movie and to kind of explore this character, even though it may not be fleshed out to its full potential, I think it's still a good choice to kind of still try to focus on character in this movie. And again, it's a lot like Shutter Island. There's an eerie amount of similarities between the movies.
To be fair, too, I think I really like his performance in Inception just based on the fact that it's created some really awesome memes online.
Yeah, seriously.
Like that scene with Cillian Murphy has created some of the most awesome jokes that I've read in my life.
What do you mean? Which scene?
The one where he's talking to Cillian Murphy in the bar.
Yeah, and the water tilts and the whole room shifts.
Yeah, but he has that really like he's trying to do that face where his eyes are wide open, and then all of a sudden Cillian Murphy says something. He's just like,
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so his next performance in a movie was in 2011. This is, of course, J. Edgar, directed by Clint Eastwood. So what are your thoughts on you know, his portrayal of J. Edgar Hoover?
he is really good as J. Edgar Hoover, and I think he was probably the best option to play J. Edgar Hoover because he kind of has like J. Edgar Hoover has a very Jekyll and Hyde type thing. Like part of me wants to like J. Edgar Hoover, but he's such a bad person, and I think DiCaprio really brings it to life. Whereas you could really make a mistake by casting someone else because J. Edgar's a tough guy to play. Just because you have to have those high highs where you got like J. Edgar really ecstatic and happy about everything, but then you got those moments where he's just this despicable human that just looks into presidents for no reason. And I thought DiCaprio really nailed the role.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment. You know, there's an interesting story I heard about this movie. I don't know if you're aware, but I guess Clint Eastwood, when he directs, he likes to do minimal amount of takes, I guess, if you will. I mean, he usually supposedly stops at 4 or 5 takes and never really goes beyond that. And I guess supposedly there was some strife on set between DiCaprio and Clint Eastwood because DiCaprio wanted to keep going. You know, he wanted to keep exploring this character and trying different things, and you know, maybe trying some things that aren't even in the script. And I guess supposedly Clint Eastwood wasn't having any of that. You know, he says 4 takes and we're done or whatever. So you know, in a way that I think that kind of shines through in the movie. I don't, as good as he is in the movie, I think he could have maximized his potential of playing Jagger even more if he had, you know, had room to play, if you will, if he had room to explore, you know. Um, so I mean, you know, and Jagger as a film, it wasn't very memorable for me at all.
I
Um,
I like it, but some of the makeup in the film really hurt it.
yeah,
And
it's bad.
they play up the Army Hammer like kind of gay relationship it to a much stronger level than it needed to be. Like
Yeah.
if they would have left that ambiguous, I think it would have made the film a lot better.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Okay, so moving on to this last year, 2012. His only role for the year was, of course, as Calvin Candy in Django Unchained. So why don't you go ahead and talk about this role a little bit, Kurt?
Calvin Candy is my favorite performance in DiCaprio's career. He is so good in the Tarantino universe, and I did not expect that. I thought he would be the weak link of the film because he doesn't. I mean, he delivers lines well, but Tarantino has a specific way that you have to deliver lines,
Mm-hmm.
and he has all the wit and sarcasm to pull this movie off. Not only does he, I think Tarantino, if he didn't have DiCaprio, I think it would have actually caused a problem in the film because Tarantino tends to have villains that are really funny, but they're not really as I don't know how to say this, like threatening as Calvin Candy per se.
Mm-hmm.
And DiCaprio has this very odd, skewed nature about him in this movie. Like he'll play along with jokes, and you feel like he'll catch on to things, but he really doesn't. But at the same time, he's so damn serious. But he's so, I don't know. I kind of speechless about this role because it is one of those rare occasions where you get to see an actor step out of the box and
Mm-hmm.
really take it to a home run level.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I completely agree, man. Every time I think about DiCaprio in this movie, I think of that shot, and it was in the trailer for Django too, where it's kind of like that zoom shot, and it zooms up to his face and the cigarette, and he's like got this huge smile on his face, and that just I think says everything that you need to say about this movie. I mean, you know, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think DiCaprio is somewhat reserved, you know, in his roles and in his choices. I mean, again, it's going back to like you said, he doesn't really step out of the box this much, and it feels like Tarantino said, "Okay, we're gonna put you in this movie, and it's just gonna be a giant sandbox, and we're just gonna let you play." You know, let's just play. Let's just, you know, let's do it and just and see what happens. And that's something that I really love about this performance. I mean, he while still being the most gracious and not caring, but you know, he's a gracious host to these characters. You know, as far as the characters of Django and King Schultz, but and at the same time, while being this very inviting person, he's this very menacing person. You know, and I think it just goes back to his ability to actually try something different. You know, I mean, this is his first villain role, and to be honest, I'd love to see him do some more villain roles because he's just so great. And maybe it wouldn't work out because he's not being directed by Quentin Tarantino, but hey, you know, why not try?
I don't really see that happening either because
No,
he hated playing Calvin Candy. I don't know if you heard the stories, but
no, I didn't.
he actually hated being on set half the time because he knew he was playing such an awful person.
Yeah,
And that doesn't surprise me because he kind of stays safe and plays the good guy in a lot of movies.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I think we can move on after that. So of course, the next one in his filmography is The Great Gatsby, which we kind of mentioned at the beginning of the episode here. So I'm not too familiar with the source material here on The Great Gatsby. So why don't you tell me what you think of Baz Luhrmann's choice to cast DiCaprio as Jay Gatsby?
I think DiCaprio is a great choice as Jay Gatsby. I think he really exemplifies everything about Jay Gatsby from the novel. Jay Gatsby is a very bombastic, over the top, rich, kind of tycoon character, but
Mm-hmm.
he has this want to be in love. and he will do anything to impress uh, any woman. But he kind of casts his eye on the Carey Mulligan character
Mm-hmm.
in this film. I kind of hope that Carey Mulligan is not used the way is in the novel, because she kind of feels like a ditzy blonde. But
Mm-hmm.
I think this movie can live or die based upon the DiCaprio performance,
Yeah.
because that's about the only thing that I find super exciting about this movie.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think Toby Maguire is an inspired choice. Just because, I mean, he does a lot of dramas, but this just kind of seems out there for him, I guess. And I know he hasn't been doing too many roles lately, but back to DiCaprio. And you know, again, I'm not too familiar with this, but the sense I get from the trailers is that the Gatsby character is also very, you know, along with all the things you said, he's very. How do I put this? He's a very almost a pretty boy in a way. You know, it seems like, and I think DiCaprio's really good at kind of doing the pretty boy image. I mean, you look at like The Aviator, especially the beginning of that movie where he's kind of like this pampered, this pampered young teenager who's been given everything. I mean, you also look at crap. What is the other one I'm thinking of? I don't know. Romeo and Juliet, I guess, would probably be the closest one. Um, but I mean, I just really see him doing a good job in that sense, of having that kind of snarky, upper class mentality that this character obviously has. I mean, if you see the trailers, that's a pretty strong indication there. So there's one more Leo role that's coming down the pipeline, and it's of course The Wolf of Wall Street, and this is the first movie he's done with Martin Scorsese since Shutter Island. Do you know anything about this movie, and are you excited to see the two working together again?
I'm excited for any time Martin Scorsese releases a film, whether it
Yeah.
has DiCaprio or anybody in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually really intrigued by this cast, because so far I've heard that DiCaprio is confirmed and Jonah Hill is confirmed. Those are
Yeah.
two very different actors to throw in the film.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the story, because from what I've heard, they're kind of keeping it under wraps for a little bit. But it's Scorsese, so I'm gonna sit my ass in a seat and watch it.
Seriously, man, the guy is a master of cinema. I mean, he's just top notch. But yeah, this movie has Leonardo DiCaprio, Jonah Hill, Matthew McConaughey, Jean Dujardin, who of course won the Oscar for The Artist a few years ago. Kyle Chandler. You have Jon Favreau. Let's see, you have Spike Jonze in here. Wow, I didn't even know that guy was still acting. But I guess supposedly this is a crime drama film based on a memoir of a person named Jordan Belfort. So that, I mean, that's pretty vague, but like you said, it's Scorsese, man. It's necessary viewing in the theater. Um, so I think we can go ahead and leave it at that. What are your final thoughts on Leo as an actor, and I guess what would you like to see him do in the future?
I would like to see him kind of jump out of the box more. I think Django kind of treated us to something new from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if he wants to be this all-time classic actor who can steal Academy Awards, I think it's gonna have to take him to do something different to pull all kinds of new viewers in,
Yeah,
even if he feels like the character isn't a nice person, or if the movie isn't quite what he's used to. I think
yeah.
he I think it's nice to see an actor kind of adapt to something new.
Well, and acting, is inherently an adapt. God damn it, I cannot speak tonight. Acting is inherently an adaptive process. I mean, there are things going on the set all the time. There are changes being made, and you kind of have to be on your feet when you're an actor. So I think I have to agree in that sense. It feels like almost, if he keeps going the way he's going with these roles, I almost feel like he could become very stale very quick. So let's just hope in the future that he tries to challenge himself. I think the Great but Gatsby is definitely a step in that direction. As obvious as it may seem to cast him in this movie. But hey, we'll see. We're probably going to end up doing a review of The Great Gatsby here this weekend, so we'll see how he holds up. So is there anything else you want to add to the discussion here, Kurt?
I think I'm okay.
All right, cool. So with that being said, you guys can always email us at movienerdsmailbox@gmail.com. We definitely want to hear you guys' feedback. Any comments you guys have for us, please make sure to let us know. We're definitely going to be reading the stuff you guys send us. So also make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you guys like the new format, let us know, because if you guys are liking stuff that we're doing, definitely let us know, and we'll be doing more of that, because, as much as we want to do the things we want to do, we also want to do things, that our audience is going to be interested in. Specifically, you guys in the group, let us know what you think. It's very important. So we're going to go ahead and sign off here. My name is Taylor Salen, and Kurt, thank you for joining me in this very special conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, all right, man. We'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
All right. I just got to be careful, man, because I just hit the stop button on accident.
Well, stop hitting the stop button.
Well, shit, man. Come on.
I mean, come on, bro. God.
Brohamski.
Brohamski. I like that one.
All right. Let's do this shit, dude. See, Okay. So I have a list of films here. Have you ever seen Critters 3 or Poison Ivy?
No.
What about This Boy's Life?
No.
Okay. Those are his first 3 movies, so I'll just breeze by those. We'll talk about Gilbert Grape a little bit. After that, we have The Foot Shooting Party, The Quick and the Dead.
What?
Yes, this movie is called The Foot Shooting Party.
That is the dumbest movie title I've ever heard in my life.
Dude, that one's even worse than Bloods versus Crips.
With the Z.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm trying to understand what the studio thinks of a film named
Oh, God.
The Foot Shooting Party. Like, what's the premise?
Hold
Do
on.
people...
Hold on. This is the beauty of Wikipedia. I can just click the link.
They want to imagine that the movie never existed.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see, 90s, The Foot Shooting Party. Yeah, it's not even worth looking at. We'll just laugh at the title.
I don't even know. Like, is that just like 4 guys go in a room and they're like, guess what? I can hurt myself more. I'll shoot myself in the foot. And then they all just shoot themselves in the foot. And that's the whole movie.
I can hurt myself more than you, man.
And then that's why the BME Pain Olympics exist.
All right. You ready to start this, dude? I know I keep saying that.
I am ready. I don't know if I'm like stretched out enough.
Yeah,
yet.
I feel like I'm starting to get stiff.
Yeah, I gotta stretch my arms out because I use them to talk so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.